have ever heard of the Ten Commandments? Laugh. Okay, that's good. What's number 4? Wait, what? Keep the Sabbath. Oh, somebody was listening to the readings we were having. There's a theme in the readings today about the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath. So, in the book of Exodus, when Moses is given the law, in Exodus 20, it goes something like this, that line about the Sabbath. Observe the Sabbath, keep the Sabbath day holy. For the Lord your God rested on the 7th day. You also should rest on the 7th day. Nobody should work on the 7th day, not you, not anybody in your house, not your slave, nobody. It is holy to the Lord. Does that sound familiar? Now it does, good. Okay, the Sabbath day. How many of you grew up with Sabbath as a practice in perhaps your home, where the meals for Sunday were cooked on Saturday, so you didn't have to do any work on Sunday? Anybody know that? No? A few, okay. How many of you remember blue laws? A few of you, okay. For those of you who don't know what that is, that used to be that things were closed on Sundays. There was no shopping, no going out, none of that business. Sunday was a day where business did not occur. Those days have passed. Basically, you could do anything you can do on any other day, you can do on a Sunday. But the Sabbath day. Here's the interesting thing. Did you notice in that text from Deuteronomy that it wasn't about a day of rest at all? It's like it turned the meaning of the Sabbath. Instead, it's talking about being delivered from slavery in Egypt. Isn't that odd? How do we go from rest to honor the Lord who rested after creation to liberation from slavery? I am the Lord your God. I brought you out of Egypt, so you observe the Sabbath day. That's a shift. Now, that's not to say that the Bible is contradictory. It's to say that it is rich. If you were to ask me, well, which one is it? Is it rest or is it liberation? The answer is yes. It's both. It's not an either or, it's both. God's really big, just want you to know. The Sabbath gets redefined in such a way as to reveal God's nature, God's purposes. Now, if you really want to have your head turned 180 degrees around, look at that gospel passage. Jesus and the disciples happen to be walking through a field and they're picking, it says grain, whatever it was ripe and they were fixing to eat it. Picked it and eat it. They were hungry. Now, where are these Pharisees? I just imagine this, where did they show up? Were they standing there with binoculars, watching Jesus and the disciples just waiting, lying in wait to see who was going to eat the corn or not eat the corn? Seems a little bit exaggerated, but either that or there's some people who are just fusspots. Maybe then and now, maybe. I don't know. People just waiting to pounce on somebody who breaks the rules. Right? And Jesus, in his smooth manner, he says, look, they're hungry, and they're going to eat. Do you not know? And then he reminds them of this story. There was another time when King David came to the tent of meeting where there was the presence of God in the secret bread of presence. And nobody was supposed to have that, and he ate it, and they ate it, because they had need. It's almost as if Jesus is saying, need is what this is all about. It's as if Jesus is saying that your religiosity, that's fine, but when there's need, that's observing the Sabbath for real in its substance. So you can keep the laws. You can keep all the rules. And let me just say, we Episcopalians, we rock in our religiosity. We got lots of customs. Everything from what we wear in church, how we light the candles, how we receive the Eucharist. We've got rules and we've got ways of doing everything. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you understand the substance. You can make the sign of the cross. It's a beautiful custom. It's a prayer. But if you don't know why you're doing it, it doesn't mean anything. I think that's the heart of what Jesus is saying. Look, you all have missed the whole point of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a gift from God for that which gives life. God created the world and rested. It was really good, God said. Very good. Now I'm going to sit and just watch. In the Deuteronomy passage, you know why you observe the Sabbath? Because I liberated you. I'm a God of life and of liberation. I'm a life-giving God. Observe the Sabbath. Just take a step back. Just take a deep breath and remember, I am holy. And here Jesus is with his disciples getting chewed on by the fuss pots. And he says, don't you know who the Lord of the Sabbath is? You would untie animals, wouldn't you, and water them. You'd milk the cow if the cow needed milking on the Sabbath. You're not that cruel, but you don't care about people? Do you not understand who the Lord of the Sabbath is? I do. Do you not? You do? That's wonderful. Amen. I am so glad. He is Lord of the Sabbath. The substance of this commandment in the Ten Commandments and here in Deuteronomy, and as Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees, he's saying to them, you've missed the substance of who God is. And you've substituted a religious custom and rule that you're all in knots about, and you're missing the point, which is God himself. God, who is the life giver. God, who is the Sabbath giver. God, who is the one that breathes life. He heals a withered hand. Yes, okay, that's work. It's not any work I've ever done on a Sabbath. Is it work you've ever done on a Sabbath? Go around healing people? I mean, who can do that? Only God. And if he is Lord of the Sabbath, which he claims in this passage, can he not say, stretch out your hand and be healed? Jesus is so smooth. Just to show you, stretch out your hand. Healed. Who's the Lord of the Sabbath? Jesus is. Now, I want you to notice the end of that gospel passage, because it just, remember last week I asked you to be gobstopped by things? Sometimes the text does that to me, and it just takes my breath away. So Jesus has in a sense, argued with the Pharisees and tried to convince them, look, my disciples' eating is perfectly in line with the will of God, who is the giver of life. Sabbath is for healing. Sabbath is for life. And look, just to prove it to you, I'm going to heal this guy over here, who's all got a withered up hand. Stretch out your hand. He's healed. See, that's how God works. Now, the interesting thing at the end is their response. What is their response? Their response is to conspire to destroy him. Now, isn't that just odd? A little bit odd? I mean, if Bonnie and I, you're sitting on the edge, so I get to pick on you. All right. So, if Bonnie and I have a disagreement about who God is or the way God works, you know, we might, in fact, we could probably come up with a number of issues where there'd be all kinds of disagreement here about the way we understand how God works. Right? But Bonnie,
what is to me?
I am not going to destroy you. I mean, I might not like what she has to say. I might not like her view of God. I might not even understand it, but I am not going to destroy her or look for a way to destroy her. It's almost, I don't want to say it's comical, because it's not comical, but it does seem to be rather extreme, doesn't it?
Ironic.
Yeah. And ironic. He's telling them about the Lord of life, the one who gives life, who is the liberator. That this very substance of Sabbath, this religious custom, is about the very presence of God himself. And yet their response to it is, oh, let's destroy him. Ooh, that just gives me chills. Is that our response often to God? I don't like that. I'll just silence. I'll just remove it. I'll just kill it. I'll just ignore it so I don't have to change. In essence, that's what's happening here with the Pharisees. Oh, we'll take care of this problem. We'll take care of him. I really love that Jesus says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. You know why? Because they do kill him. But he's not dead. He comes back. Just as this ultimate sort of wonderful exclamation point on this little conversation that one day when they were eating grain in the field. If God is a God of life, and I believe that he is, and he is Lord of the Sabbath, then this text and these texts, as they are tied together, they do a wonderful thing for us. They hold up a mirror. And they ask us to look at ourselves and our religious practice, this is one of my favorite words, religiosity. Religiosity. Because it's very easy, it's very tempting as human beings to substitute the substance of a relationship with a living God for practice. For the ways in which we do things instead of walking with God. And as I mentioned, we Episcopalians, well, we're on the edge of that. Because we like our things. And we like our stuff. So even more for us, hold up the mirror and look at yourself. Are you walking with God in a liveliness, in an expectation to see life? I mean, that was last week's sermon, being gobstopped, gobsmacked, having the surprise of God's presence all of a sudden. There's something very similar here in this passage. Where the Pharisees did not expect to see someone very willfully violating religious law. And Jesus is trying to teach them, show them with a wonderful, that way he has, holding up a mirror and saying, you stand before the Lord of the Sabbath. The one who is the creator of heaven and earth, who brings life out of lifelessness, light out of darkness. Just remember, it's not about you. What honors God is the taking care of one another, the paying attention to your neighbor, the noticing when someone's hungry, the noticing when someone hurts, when someone needs healing, and praying and relying on God, who is the life giver. That's what the Sabbath is about. That's what it's about. It's about an awesome God who shows up. So I admonish you, keep the Sabbath, observe the Sabbath, observe it in all of its holiness, which is really found right here with our neighbors, with those all around us whom God brings into our path. Whatever their needs are, if you can meet them, meet them. But really let the scales fall from your eyes and see what God sees, which is love. People who need it more than they need to be smacked for not following religious custom and rules that can suck the life out of you instead of give life. How is it that 2,000 years ago, human beings still had the same kind of patterns and issues that we still see today? Whenever I hear this story, I like to believe that I'm one of the disciples that's hungry and I'm just fixing to eat. The sad part is I'm actually probably one of the Pharisees, standing on the side with my binoculars watching for what other people do. I just admit it. If you knew the thoughts of my heart and the way the thoughts just kind of roll on a scrolling screen through my head, Yeah, can be, for sure. So this message isn't just, all you Pharisees. The fact of the matter is, Pharisees live. Each one of us has a Pharisee, at least a little bit, going on inside of us. So the invitation there is that near. Just understand before whom you live and move and have your being. The Lord of the Sabbath, the giver of life, the one who calls us to life and to give life.